Good morning, everybody. And this is Riot Mort, and you are listening to Walk the Dog. No, but seriously, I have enjoyed that as I've posted these, people have been like, hey, here's a bunch of different titles. You should have called it this. So far, Walk the Dog has been my favorite of the titles people have posted, but yeah, that's been funny. So, again, glad you guys, or at least the people who are watching this, are enjoying it. So, I'm going to keep doing it. Plus, I think it's like 5:45 a.m. right now. It's very foggy today. So, very foggy, very overcast. But yeah. Let's see. There are four questions I was supposed to answer today. The first one was what is the most interesting or funniest artifact interaction you've had since developing the artifacts? And I'll be honest, this is a hard one for me because once we move past a set, I have to deal with so many future sets right now that I immediately kind of forget a lot of the like development stories. I'm really bad at this. Because right now I'm working on essentially 14 live, 15, 16, and to a tiny extent 17, and soon 18. It's like I can barely remember what happened in 13. I was even trying to think of like some artifact interactions in 13. I was just drawing a blank because it's just like, man, I don't have time to think about the past. I got to think about the future. So it's just a bit of a weakness of mine that I tend to forget those. Now, that being said, I did at least try to think of a couple. And I will say, Horizon Focus always comes to mind. The fact I was playing Horizon Focus Rek'Sai, that one set, before anyone else was kind of fun to me. But if I had to pick one, I was trying to think like, well, I'll give you at least a development story. And during development of set 14, Zac was being made. And the concept for Zac was, we needed a 5 cost that kind of just like could go in any comp. And someone had come up with the idea, well, like, we're going to do the Zac thing where you buy the blobs and then he splits into 2. And immediately anyone who was sort of gameplay related was like, you realize this is going to be like, just like Trenchcoat, where it's like put any activation item on these champions, put Spark on them, or put Sunfire, or but more importantly, put like the really good items, the obvious one being Trenchcoat. Because if, the clones can activate those, then that's going to be intense. And so there was one playtest where it was like, cool, let's just prove this fact. And we had a Zac with 0 blobs, but it had Trenchcoat and Horizon Focus. And exactly what you think happened, did, which was the Zacs split for the Trenchcoat, and then those Zacs would each activate their split, and then those Zacs would activate the Trenchcoat, and, a single Zac all of a sudden had like, I think it was like 9 or 12 Zacs on the board, and each one that would cast would trigger Horizon Focus, and it was like, there, look, do you see this? We can't ship this. Come on now. And so that was a very clear, like, come on. And sometimes that happens, right? You get a designer who's really ambitious, and they're like, I want to try this really cool thing. We actually have, it's a design lesson I have to work on with some of the people on the team, is it's like, just because it's unique doesn't mean it's good, And it's a hard line to balance, but yeah. And so definitely those are the kind of games that during development you're like, okay, come on now. So, and it can be small stuff like that. Because the reality is every designer has their different strengths and weaknesses. Some are going to be better at numbers and balance. Others are going to be better at pushing the envelope and coming up with really unique aspects. And so, that's why it takes a team to build a game. But I know this isn't the most satisfying answer to your question. But yeah, that's why I tend to struggle thinking with like specific interactions in the past, because it's like, yeah, we either killed them pretty quickly on paper, or it was a predictable, obvious thing that was going to be rough, and it was like, yeah, see? And then you end up having to kill it. Yeah. I think the only other fun one I can think of is when we're trying to bring back Cursed Blade, and we got in a situation where someone had a super tank versus like a big Cho'Gath. And then the Curse Blade did manage to shrink the enemy Cho'Gath all the way down to 0 HP. And it was really funny watching this giant Cho'Gath shrink over and over and over until it finally got down to 0 HP and then disappeared. But that was pretty funny too. So yeah, that's kind of my answer to that question. The next question was, are there anything from the set 14 hacks that you think could become evergreen, could stick around for the rest of TFT? And the short answer, if you don't want to listen to this whole thing, is no, I don't. Now, why is that? It's not like they're bad mechanics or anything. But pretty much since, I want to say since set 9, it might even be since set 8, we have had a philosophy, and I've mentioned this if you've ever listened to any of my comments before, where it's like, we are at the complexity ceiling. We do not want to make our game more complex. And we had a habit of taking things and keeping them in the game, right? So set 5, Radiant items are still around. Set 6, Augments, obviously still around. Set 7, Shimmer Scale items, still around. Set 8, Hero Augments, still around, right? Like everything we would add to the game, it's like, this is cool, let's keep it. And the game sort of compounded into having too many things, and it makes those things less special. So for example, when we did the set 5 revival, it's like Radiant items are back, and you're like, they never left, bro. Who cares? Which isn't great. And so, working with our game director, Peter Whalen, we said, you know what? We need to be really good about keeping things that are in the set as part of the set so that we don't add to the bloat of the game, and those things can be memorable and exciting and relevant to that set. And then, once they go away, you're like, cool. And once they come back, great. An example of this is the Anomaly, right? Like the Anomaly was a good mechanic and people liked it, and generally in all of our surveys was responded to well. Doesn't mean we need to keep it, I think the last thing we really kept was opening encounters, but which was less about keeping and more about replacing portals, which was set 9. But yeah, so generally with any mechanic now, we go into it under the assumption that it will not be permanent. And at this point, it would take a lot for, if we shipped a mechanic, it would have to crush it, right? It would let's say we shipped a mechanic that was so good, it increased play hours by 20% and trials by 40%. It was just that good. Then maybe we would start to have the conversation of, okay, should we be keeping this around? Does it make TFT a better game? And even then, I'm not sure game director wise they'd want to do that. It's just sure, it's good, but maybe we just bring it back sooner, or there's some complexities behind it. There's one set mechanic coming up that I've definitely had people on the team be like, hey, do we think this is going to be evergreen? And again, my response is always, nope, we don't. We just have to assume nothing is going to be evergreen anymore. But like I said, that could change. Now, of the set 14 hacks, let's say you put a gun to my head and you said, sorry, this is that uphill part early on. Let's say you put a gun to my head and said, you have to make something evergreen. What would it be? Well, I think the first obvious one that comes to mind is the Salvager. The Salvager that just shipped. If you told me the Salvager was going to be a permanent consumable, or hell, maybe just replaced for Forger, I don't know. Or replaced for Mover, I could see it. That's probably the least damaging one. Oh, uphill part. Early in the morning, man, I tell you. It's hey, I know you just woke up, but get walking. Anyway, Salvager is probably my answer. Beyond that, opening encounters. There's a couple of the opening encounters that aren't bad. The new Twisted Fate reroll one. It's not the worst. But yeah, so TLDR here. I don't think any opening encounters, any hacks are going to be permanent. But Salvager would be the one to check. So, whew, yeah. Okay. Sorry, my day yesterday was a blur. It was literally wake up, do the walk, do the thing, drive to Seattle, do the double up event, drive home, play one game of Binding of Isaac, go to bed. That was my Sunday. So, kind of a blur. Anyway, next question. Next question was, what games are you playing and looking forward to? And this one's tricky because if you look at the games industry right now, and I frankly, I think this has been the case for about 10 to 15 years now. I believe that every game that is hyped up by the marketing machines ends up being a disappointment. Part of that could just be my jadedness with the games industry as a whole, or the fact that I design games for a living, so all I see are the flaws. But this thing is wobbling. Anyway, so generally, like, if there's a game that's been announced, Jesus, this thing wobbling like crazy. There we go. Okay. Anything that's been announced, I don't buy into the hype. I think it's like, well, that's a game that's probably not going to be as good as they promise, and things like that. Because if you look at all the like best games in the last 5 years that have really captured people's imaginations or captured people's time, they come out of nowhere, right? They're just games that like you weren't expecting. Best example of this is probably Balatro. Balatro is a game. It's just like, surprise. No one's heard of this. No one cares. And it's amazing. Even if you go recently, like right now, Expedition 33. I don't think anybody was hyped for Expedition 33. And then it came out and it's like, surprise. The game's really good. Go play it. Go enjoy it. So, yeah. So because of that, my approach with the games industry is more, if someone says a game is really good, then I'll go try it and check it out. But otherwise, I don't really look forward to games anymore, so much as I'm like, well, we'll see how it goes. Now, that being said, again, gun to my head, if you told me, no, Mort, you gotta commit here. Like, what are you actually excited for? Well, I mean, the Nintendo guy in me, Donkey Kong Bonanza looks interesting. I'm hoping Donkey Kong Bonanza looks good. Now, that could play one of two ways, right? It could be an incredibly mediocre platformer, or it could be really, really good. And so, I hope it's good. We'll see. Metroid Prime 4, I'm just a Metroid fan. That being said, I didn't really like Metroid Dread that much. It was good. It was just, like B- to me. So, if Metroid Prime 4 is good, cool. Though Retro's been working on that game for 8-9 years. Games that have 8-9 year development cycles always scare me. So, a little worried about that one. Hades 2. I know it's out in early access. I haven't touched it. I'm waiting for the 1.0 release. So I'll probably play some Hades 2. That being said, my concern with Hades 2 is that it's just more Hades. And it's like, not really looking for more Hades right now. I'm looking for something different. Because for me, when I'm looking for a new game, I'm looking for something I haven't experienced before, something different. And this is why generic sequels don't always do it for me. It's why when developing TFT, I'm always like, how do we innovate? What's the thing that people are going to go, oh, cool, I've never tried this before. I gotta mess with that, And the sets that don't end up having that, I tend to feel are kind of weaker. So it's like, what is our innovation? What is our interesting thing? What is that? So then from there, I find myself now, when I actually play games that aren't TFT, going to comfort picks. I have one of those SNES minis hooked up in my theater room. So I'll just play Mario World or Super Metroid, Tetris Attack, those comfort SNES games, Mega Man X, Donkey Kong Country. I've been playing Binding of Isaac recently again. And that game, I've already put like 400 or 500 hours into it. Done pretty much everything. Not everything, but all the stuff I want to do, I've done on that game. So kind of just doing it again because it's relaxing. Admittedly, I still play Hearthstone Battlegrounds because it's good competitive analysis. And it reminds me that, like, and again, if you're somehow listening to this and work on Hearthstone Battlegrounds, your game's fun. I enjoy it. But it definitely makes me feel better about my balance. Because they have cultivated a game where the balance isn't really that relevant. Whereas my game, you get one thing wrong and the audience wants to murder you. So, but yeah. So I think those are the games I have mostly been playing. And yeah, like I said, I find myself, looking at things too critically. I played Blueprints. I played Expedition 33. So, man, this stick is just wobbly. Okay. Last question for the day, which was, hey, Mort, if you came back to streaming, would you consider making changes to make it less stressful? And the answer to this is absolutely. Hilariously enough, I got some really good feedback from Riot Blue Velvet, who was like somebody who's watched my stream for a few years now. One of the people on the team that actually pays attention to it. And he even had some feedback. He's like, hey, you should probably change these things coming back. And the first one is actually a really important one. I kind of got lost in the sauce a little bit. And, because, as I've said, I don't like letting people down. So because I got to this point where it was like, I need to make sure every YouTube day for the people who watch on YouTube has a good video. So I would go into a weekend for going, okay, my goal is to get 7 firsts. And TFT is the kind of game where when you create these artificial goals for yourself like that, and things start not going your way, it creates stress. So like if I needed 7 firsts and we're most of the way through Saturday and I have 1 first, I start getting stressed and I start getting irritable because it's like, damn it, things aren't going my way. And I get frustrated and I play worse. And so it becomes a never-ending spiral of, well, now that I'm getting grumpy and playing worse, I can't get first, which is making me grumpy. I can't play, So it's a bad pattern. And it's funny too, because I think about like these challenger players who are trying to hit their LP snapshots and why they're so irritable. And it's like, very similar, right? Because it's like they're just trying to get to 1,000 LP. One little thing goes wrong, sets them off. And the next thing you know, you're reading a twit longer or whatever. So step 1 is I'm going to make sure if I come back to streaming that, there will be YouTube videos. There will be placements. I don't care what they are. Stop worrying about firsts. Don't worry about that. The picking all 3 augments will probably go away simply because when you get to the 3-2 and 4-2 augments, I don't think those go well. They create these situations where, and again, most of the time when people are doing a pick all 3 augments, a lot of us will be like, oh, they picked a bad augment, they're griefing. Most of the time, the person wasn't griefing, right? This might be a legitimate fan who's watching watching the stream, and they're just gold, or platinum, and they made a mistake, It's hard sometimes. So and even in the moment, because I'm like trying to get first, it's like, I might be really harsh to them and be like, why did you pick that? That was a terrible pick, which feels bad for everybody, right? Like I'm stuck playing an augment that isn't great. They're stuck feeling bad that they picked something less optimal. It's just not a great experience. Jesus Christ, why is this thing so wobbly? Look at this. Stay straight, stupid stick. Jesus. Anyway, halfway point. Woohoo! So I'll keep pick first augment because first augment's pretty hard to mess up. But I will replace it with something though that I think is more fun, and I think it's going to be pick a carry. And what it'll be is it would be, you just get to name a champion, right? I want to see a Rengar game. I want to see a Shaco game. I want to see a, whatever game. I want to see you make Seraphine work. And it'll force me to find a position in the next 3 or 4 games where it's okay, time to make Seraphine work. I think that'll be more fun, and it would be better towards the goal of making sure every champion's playable and making sure every line is playable, things like that. So I think we would replace it with that. The other thing, I've been thinking about this a lot, is what else would I change? It's well, I think Mort must answer, I think, would need to happen after games, so that I can give the questions their full attention, kind of like I am with these walks, rather than hey, I'm in the middle of my 4-3 roll down trying to answer a question about, why we made the balanced decision to change. I can't give very good answers while also playing the game and trying to perform well. I just can't. So I do not know what the 6th problem is today. It's because I keep switching hands. Anyway, so that would be another change. And then the other change is that I just generally need to stop getting one guide in chat. I need to make it a rule that I don't look at the, when someone comes in and just your game's bad, I just need to ignore it. I have to just ignore it. Because again, when I respond to those, I am not happy with myself and the way I respond to those. It creates a negative impression of me. Then people get negative on that. And I've always held the standard that I'm only negative when someone starts it. But even then, that negativity, it's the eye for an eye thing, right? It's your negativity creates more negativity. I just need to stop that. I need to stop that. So, so yeah, that's kind of the changes I would make to my stream, assuming I came back. Now, that being said, I'm still waiting to see how this work curveball goes. So, yeah. Cool. Those are the 4 questions I had for today. And I still have, God, this thing is just so wobbly. I don't like it. Why are you wobbling, dude? Sit up straight. Jesus Christ. I got to learn how to use this stupid gimbal stick, too. Stop wiggling. Oh, my God, dude. Seriously. Anyway. So, with the time I have left, what I can say... Hopefully you're just listening to this and you're not watching this, because, my God, this video looks bad. Jesus Christ. Whee! Whatever, man. I'll just hold it like this. With the time I have left, I went to the Double Up event. And for the first 5 or 6 hours, I mostly just sat around talking to some of the players that wanted to talk to me. Probably the best conversations were Box. He came by and he hadn't played Double Up before, other than this tournament. And he was having a lot of fun with it. But he had some suggestions, and I talked through some of those suggestions. And then he asked other design questions, which was really good. Jesus Christ. I might just end the video here just because this thing cannot seem to... Oh, my God. Come back. Why? What? Stupid stick, man. Anyway, talking to Box was good. Had some good conversations there. I ran into Asa, talked with him a little bit about various things. He had brought somebody who's a newer TFT player who's had hit Master and had hit Challenger once to talk to them a bit. I'm bad with names until I learn them 10 times, so I can't remember that person's name. Who else did I talk to? Talked to Froden a little bit. Klee, Gangly. Gangly was really excited about his Nitro and the fact that Nitro is getting buffs next patch. Talked to Roger, talked to Aniko, but I talked to them at work, so that wasn't too crazy. Trying to remember who else I talked to. But Scara in the bathroom. We just happened to be going to the restroom at the same time. Said hi to him. But yeah, overall, was just there to kind of support the event and see how things were going. They asked me to cast the finals. I was like, sure. So hopefully everyone who watched that enjoyed that. The funny thing about casting now, I've been doing it so long now that like people are like, oh, do you mind casting? And it's like, so you want me to just sit around and talk about TFT for 3 hours? Can do, you know. TFT is a fun game, and getting to talk about it for a bit, no problem. So that was fun. But yeah, this week I am going to be spending the start of my time working on 14.5 stuff. There are some changes you guys will hear about probably tomorrow that I'm going to be trying to get as accurate as possible. And then after that, I have to switch over to set 15 work. It's time to start going real deep on 15 on my end. See if we're getting that ready for ship. And all of this, again, assumes that the curveball doesn't surprise me. So that's kind of my week. The good news is, it's funny, a lot of the coworkers I work with the most, Blue Velvet, Kent, are actually on vacation these next 2 weeks, which inherently makes my schedule a little quieter. So my calendar is actually pretty clear this week. So hopefully I can get some real good focus time in. And then Wednesday when 14.4 comes out, I'll need to get some games in on that, see how that patch feels. Hopefully an improvement. So far from what I'm seeing, my worry with 14.4 is that Bruiser Boombot didn't get hit quite enough. Because, you know, if you base it off like what we saw in some of the tournaments here, the Street Demon's getting a small hit, which should be fine. Vanguard Marksman is not. So I think Vanguard Marksman is going to become the primary, like, default line to play. So I think that's going to happen. I think the new comp that will emerge will be around 4 Dynamo. MF got a buff, Dynamo got a buff, Elise got a buff. I think Nitro is going to be more playable. Worst thing is, like, if Nitro somehow got overbuffed, it'll turn into, oh, we're back to a reroll meta. People will complain about that. Got to keep an eye on that. So it'll be interesting, because the really interesting thing about this set is that a lot of the lines are sort of figured out at this point. Like, if I say Nitro, you know what Nitro lines are going to be considered. If I say Dynamo, you know what lines are going to be considered. So it often becomes a question of matchups, right? Like, even now, the 7 Street Demon comp struggles against the Bruiser Boombot comp, because Brand doesn't really deal with Cho that well. But if Street Demon's worse, does Cho run away with it? Or does something that can deal with Cho, like Zeri, that struggles with Brand, start to rise to the top a bit, now that Zeri's getting a small buff? And so it's always interesting, but I want to see how things develop. You know, the changes are relatively small in this patch, so I'm hoping we end up in a situation where the meta is better. But like I said, TFT lives and dies on a nice edge, right? One thing being 1% too high, and all of a sudden, everyone feels the need to spam that comp every single game. Never know what to, like, the only ways to solve that are so antithetical to what that group wants, right? Like, imagine a game. I mean, this is an exaggeratory example, but imagine if you loaded the game and it just said, Brand's gone, right? All of a sudden, that's going to change the meta pretty drastically. But for a player who, like, wants to pick one comp and learn it, it's pretty lame. So yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of my week. Keeping an eye on the meta after 14.4 launches. Also seeing people's reaction to the patch notes, given there's no patch rundown. What does that mean? Will anybody miss the patch rundown? You know,